It started like any other quiet morning in suburbia until one neighbor crossed the line. Over and over again, she parked in his driveway like she owned it. But what she didn't know was that the man she was provoking was a civil rights attorney who had finally had enough. This isn't just a petty parking dispute. It's the story of how one act of defiance unraveled a self-proclaimed HOA queen's entire kingdom. I've always believed that neighborhoods are built on quiet agreements. A nod to the mailman, a wave at the kid next door, a shared glance of you, good across the lawn. These things hold more weight than property lines. I had no idea just how much, until Karen Beasley rolled into mine. Literally. I'm Kevin Thompson, civil rights attorney, early 40s. I own a modest two-story house in a quiet cul-de-sac that had always been peaceful, predictable. Lawnmowers in the morning, kids chalking dinosaurs on the sidewalk, porch lights flickering at dusk. That peace lasted until Karen moved in. Her house was next to mine, identical. Save for the oversized blue sedan she parked like a trophy. The first time I saw it in my driveway, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a guest had confused addresses. But then it happened again, and again, every morning. Like clockwork. Karen pulled her car onto my private property and strolled off like she owned the block. At first, I brushed it off. Pick your battles, I told myself. But each time I saw her car there, shiny, smug. It wasn't just the space she was taking. It was the assumption that she could. After 2 weeks, I finally caught her in the act, coffee in hand. I stepped out as she was getting out of her car. Morning. Karen, I said, polite but firm. Think you could use your own driveway? She didn't skip a beat. Oh, sweetie, she said with a smirk. People park where it makes sense. It's just a driveway. No need to be uptight. That word, sweetie, hit a nerve, not just because it was dismissive, but because it was performative kindness wrapped around disrespect. I knew that tone. I'd seen it in courtrooms, in boardrooms, on the faces of people who smiled while stepping on toes. I didn't respond, not directly. Instead, I took notes, literally, every instance, every timestamp. I watched, documented, waited. Then one morning, before sunrise, I walked outside and saw her car sitting there again, and I snapped. But I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I opened her door, started her car. She'd left a spare in the glove box, which I'd spotted days earlier, and rolled it gently into her own driveway. Then, in a moment of raw, unfiltered satisfaction, I picked up a can of white spray paint and wrote across the driver's side, HOA sucks. It wasn't my finest legal move, but it felt honest. I had just stepped back when I heard the sound of slippers slapping concrete. Karen came around the side of her house, saw the message, and shrieked. What the hell are you doing? She shouted. I didn't flinch. Returning your car. Didn't want you to be late. You vandalized my vehicle. You've been trespassing on mine. She stormed inside and came back moments later, phone in hand. I'm calling the police. Please do. I said, calm, measured. The officers arrived 20 minutes later. 2 cruisers. Standard protocol. One of them had been to a community rights seminar I'd given last year. He recognized me immediately. Karen launched into her story like a wind-up toy. He defaced my car. He moved it. This is targeted. The officer turned to me. She's been parking in my driveway for 3 weeks, I said, handing him a folder. Inside were photos, video captures, and a timeline. I had done my homework. The second officer turned to Karen. Is that true? Ma'am, she hesitated. I mean, technically yes, but there's no but. The officer replied. Driveways are private property. You had no right. Karen's face dropped. She wasn't used to being wrong. She certainly wasn't used to being corrected publicly. They didn't charge me. They didn't even write a report. The officers left. But the story didn't. Within 48 hours, the neighborhood grapevine had done its work. Karen's car became the talk of the block. Parents whispered about it on their morning walks. Kids pointed at the paint job like it was a museum piece. Someone even recreated it in chalk on the sidewalk. HOA Queen gets owned. But the real twist came later. Karen wasn't just annoying. She had been acting as the neighborhood enforcer, a self-appointed liaison between residents and the HOA. She sent passive-aggressive newsletters, threatened fines, filed petty complaints, a lawn 2 inches too high, notice, a garden gnome, violation. Once word spread about her driveway invasion, people began stepping forward. She said my Halloween decorations were un-Christian. One mom said, she reported my wind chimes for noise pollution. Said an elderly veteran, she made my teenage son take down his pride flag. A neighbor added. It all unraveled fast. An emergency HOA meeting was called. For the first time in its history, there was standing room only. Karen showed up like she was the guest of honor. But the room wasn't clapping. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The community spoke for itself. The board voted. Karen was stripped of her position. 3 weeks later, her car was finally repainted. 4 weeks later, she was let go from her job. Word had spread about the incident. And her employer, apparently, wasn't thrilled by the attention. Her house went up for sale soon after. But the best part, the neighborhood began to breathe again. There were more porch conversations, more laughter, more eye contact. Someone painted a mural on the community rec center wall. It showed a driveway with a blue car. But this time, the car was parked properly, and a small chalkboard sign read, "Respect starts at the curb." I never spoke to Karen again. I didn't need to. The spray paint faded, but the message stayed. I'm not saying spray painting a neighbor's car is the answer. It's not. But I do know this: when people push you, when they step onto your space, literally or figuratively, there comes a time when silence is no longer noble. Sometimes, the smallest act of defiance can spark a bigger change. And sometimes, the law begins where your driveway ends.